Let me ask you a final question. This war began on February 27th. This morning, our time, this afternoon, your time. What is your feeling about the ebb and flow of this war, where it's going, who, based on your reporting through the region, where Iran sits, where the United States and Israel sits? Are we any closer to resolution?
Very hard to say at the moment. You know, we had the discussion at the beginning of this war where I came in and said, you know, it looks successful. It looks, you know, the military is doing all these, you know, great strikes, etc. But we'll have to see how it evolves. Wars are judged not by how they begin, but how they end. It looks like a little bit of a mess at the moment. It's a little bit unclear. I think the fact that more troops are going to the US is an indicator that war could resume. I think that when President Trump says it could be over, but almost over, it's not quite clear in his mind. You know, it's a discussion between him and himself also about how he wants this to proceed. We have to see how allies in the region are going to react to this blockade. I'm hearing noises from the region that, yes, they want the United States to, quote unquote, finish the job, whatever that means. But they're also very worried that this blockade may push Iran to close another choke point. There isn't just one, there are two. There's the Strait of Hormuz, but there's also Bab el-Mandeb near Yemen, which goes into the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. And Iran could retaliate by doing that. I think we're in this interregnum where we still don't know which way it's going. America certainly can't declare victory at the moment, but frankly, neither can Iran. I think they're in a much tighter, difficult position than they're actually letting on. And the economic pressure will be great, even though they have sufficient foreign reserves. It is not going to help their people, the civilian population. And I still think that we might see some kind of protests at some point if the military campaign calms down. We're also hearing reports about undercover Israeli operations inside Iran itself. So we're really at a very tricky moment, and we'll have to see when the next round of negotiations happen. Just one last thing. The Pakistani Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, is going to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey over the next few days, and that will give us a sense of how the region is feeling about all this.
And you really... Thank you so much for your answer. I will say you said something near the end that I think neatly sums it up. You said they find themselves in a tighter, more difficult position today. And I was going to say, who? The United States or Iran? Because you can say
the Iranians
of both sides. Of course, you're talking about the Iranians, though. But it does explain that right now, we are still at a point where it could break either way. Contributing editor of the Financial Times, Kim Ghattas, as always, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you came on today to be with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Jonathan Lemire, as I said earlier at the top of the show, our allies in the Gulf region do seem relieved that the United States is not cutting and running, that Donald Trump, from what I'm hearing from the region, at the urging of Jared Kushner, adopted the Haas doctrine, trademark, at the end of that, and put the blockade in place. They believe that economically it will bring Iran to their knees, and Iran will have to negotiate. And their feeling is this is the first time in some time that actually time is on the United States and its allies' side. The blockade obviously takes care of any money, any windfall that the Iranians were making. And so now they believe we sit, we wait, and the Iranians will come back to the table with a better deal.
Richard Haas, the shadow Secretary of State. There does seem to be, I agree with you, Joe, Trump administration, as I've spoken in the last 48 hours, I wouldn't go so far as to say optimism, but there's a little more just sense of calm, I think, as to where things stand. I think things have settled down a little bit because of the blockade. It's still being put in place. Admiral Cooper, just overnight, was when first put out a statement saying it's fully operational now. We are going to see there are some major tests still to come. Will other ships try to run it? What will happen if a ship bound for China is denied, or heading from China is denied? That's a real issue. And we know President Trump is deeply concerned, and it really matters to him, this summit with Xi Jinping of China in a month's time. He doesn't want to, sort of rock the boat before that, pardon the pun. But there's still a lot of uncertainty here. But, the Pakistani foreign minister traveling the region this weekend, perhaps a good sign to get a sense as to where things stand, but it may delay talks. There have been thought that might even be this weekend in Islamabad, but if he's traveling, that may be trickier to pull off. Marc Caputo, the blockade was also meant to apply pressure on the U.S.'s European allies, who will also suffer from rising prices, to see if they'd get involved with efforts to open up the strait. At least to this point, they have not. So, question for you, as there is a sense of hope here that these sides at least will meet. We're not saying there's going to be a deal anytime soon, but at least they'll start talking again. Political operatives you talk to working with the White House or inside the West Wing themselves, do they feel like if this blockade does last for weeks and the economic pain is felt here in the United States too in a midterm year, what's their sense of confidence right now?
Well, that's the problem with the Trump White House, is that they're always confident, even in spots and times when they should be confident. So yesterday I was talking to people in the White House, and they did express that very confidence. They do believe, as Joe pointed out, as you pointed out, that the economic pressures on Iran are getting to a degree where it's forcing them more at the table. Now, understand that they've been saying that for quite some time, that bottom line, Iran wants money. They want us to stop bombing. We want the strait open, the United States says, and we want the nuclear material. So in the general kind of balance of trade or of doing a deal, the United States has money and bombs, they've got oil and uranium, and there can be a trade. That's the bottom line perception of the Trump White House. And so they think that cooler heads will prevail and that'll happen. Now, will that occur? I don't know. One of the things that they also pointed out is about a week and a half ago, and when Trump had a press conference following the rescue of the downed airman who was stranded in Iran, he ended his press conference in answer to a question if he would permit Iran to continue to have a toll at the Strait of Hormuz. And President Trump specifically said, almost off the top of his head, well, they might have a toll. Why not us? Why don't we have a toll? And everyone thought he was just sort of winging it. And it turns out that was actually part of the discussions that Trump has been having for quite some time about applying this blockade, which he called a toll at the time. They do think that if you look at the numbers, Iran exports about 1.5 million barrels, 1.7 million barrels a day of oil, or exports it through the Strait of Hormuz. That's being shut off. That basically robs the regime of about $140 million a day in revenue. They're already essentially broke. And thanks to United States sanctions, the ability for Iran to transact all of that money on the global financial market is greatly restricted. And therefore, they think this breaking point is going to come soon. Can't say it will, but that's their sense, and that's why they're communicating that sense of optimism.